Rand is also known for greed, for self-interest to a fault. A lot of people have criticized her for that. It's in her books. That's
in her life.
What comes out.
It was in her life,
It's in her own life. What about things like charity? What about things like helping others? Those don't really appear in Rand's books. She seems rather fanatical to make a point about economic freedom, a point with which I generally agree, but seems to rule out, for example, let me raise an example. George Gilder's book, Wealth and Poverty, talks about entrepreneurs who take huge risks
as gift givers.
That's right, as an act of giving to the rest of society.
And
to
Ayn Rand
make them
attacked
better.
Gilder.
And
Ayn Rand
that
hated
is correct.
Gilder.
Ayn Rand really slaughtered George Gilder for that notion that we might do it to help others. And I want to add, one of the CEOs that are associated with Ayn Rand is my friend John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods. And I went back and I've had dinner with John and talked about this, but I went back and looked at some quotations, and he makes it very clear. While he agrees with Rand's free market stuff, he does not believe that selfishness itself is a virtue, nor does he believe that business exists solely to make a profit. Now, here's a guy who is a libertarian, self-proclaimed, but makes gradations. He separates himself, Jerry, from Ayn Rand. That's kind of what I'm asking you. Can one be half? Did she miss the boat on this?
Yeah, she missed the boat terribly. And I think her atheism, her traumatic reaction to the Russian Revolution, she took the atheism from the Russian Revolution, but she rejected the socialism that goes along with the atheism. Look, historically, there's just no doubt about this. The case for freedom in America, Jefferson made it, Adams made it, Madison made it. They made it on the basis of God. We do not have an atheistic society that created the free market economy.
Excuse me. Jerry, this is ridiculous. I am an atheist. Am I unworthy of freedom? Am I unworthy to be a capitalist? Am I unworthy to be American? Tell everyone on TV that I'm unworthy. I'm an atheist.
Don, you are unworthy of the silly argument that you just made. I did not say
Answer my question. If you're going to make belief in the Christian God the criterion for freedom, then anyone who doesn't share that belief with Jerry Boyer must be unworthy of freedom. Yes or no? In or out?
If I would be allowed to finish maybe one sentence tonight, that would be really helpful.
Go ahead,
if you really believed in reason, you'd let reason go on. This is not historically disputable. Listen, I read Jefferson, I read Madison, I read these guys constantly. This is where I live my life. They base the case for freedom on theism. That is an historical fact. Well, that's where it came from in America. In fact,
that's what you're doing too. So
yes, I'm doing what Jefferson did, what
some other famous people who
Adams did.
Answer my question.
Washington
I'm an atheist. Am I unworthy of freedom? Am I immoral? Am I immoral? Yes or no? Am I immoral?
Will you let me answer the questions that you're badgering me with? You are worthy of freedom.
Am I immoral? Yes or no? Answer it, please.
Yeah, yes, you're making an immoral case.
Hang on.
Now, can I please answer your question?
Please answer, Jerry.
Don,
please answer.
You have a right to freedom. The Declaration of Independence says why? Because you are endowed by your Creator with an unalienable right to freedom. If you're just an animal who comes about by choice, then how do you get an unalienable right to freedom? If it's not given to you by your Creator, if it's not designed, then it's alienable, just like it is from any other animal. This is a historical fact, Don. You may not like it, but it's the way the world works.
I want to raise some other names here because it's fascinating. Not only are her books selling like hotcakes, and there may well be a revival of free market capitalist thinking and the materialistic side, putting aside the issue of her atheism. There may be a strong revival. I mean, you see it in the Tea Parties, you see it in the public opinion polls, which are rejecting all this massive government intervention by the new administration and the Congress. But you do have these various CEOs. I think we'll have some pictures of them. For example, Alan Greenspan. Now, Greenspan was actually part of Ayn Rand's collective. And if you go back and read the books, you'll see his little picture in there. He's the guy dressed in a black tie and a black suit who looks like an undertaker. But he is in all of those pictures. I might add my friend Marty Anderson, who was a top advisor to Ronald Reagan, was part of that collective. Other names coming out in a recent article, CEOs who really supported Ayn Rand. Hugh Hefner of the Playboy Empire. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, which surprises me. Thomas, a very religious man, but he still has he's a big follower of her. Mark Cuban of the Dallas Mavericks. Now, I mentioned Whole Foods CEO John Mackey, who draws important lines where he does not agree that selfishness is a virtue. And then, let's see, John Allison, who was the former CEO of the BB&T Bank down south. he is a very strong devotee of Ayn Rand, although Mr. Allison and his bank did take $3 billion of TARP money. Now, I want to go to Jerry Boyer on this. What do you reckon with all these CEOs? Now, Greenspan kind of semi-recanted in front of Congress, but you do have an impressive list. Undoubtedly, there are many others. Is it the free market message, all right? Sort of the John Galt message against the world that she brilliantly writes about in her books. And do these guys separate out the other moral and spiritual issues that you find objectionable?
Well, some do and some don't, but it's interesting, these Randians, when they get in positions of power and they have to choose between Rand's philosophy of selfishness and Rand's free market, they choose the philosophy of selfishness. I mean, Greenspan did not govern as a free market guy. He governed in a way that was in his interest. The BB&T bank guy, Ayn Rand, yeah, but he'll take the TARP money. So fundamentally, if you base your philosophy on selfishness, when your selfishness conflicts with a free market ideology, you'll choose selfishness every time.
Don Luskin,
Jerry, excuse me, if I may get a word in edgewise against this ridiculous representative of the religious right on this show with me. I happen to have spent all day last Tuesday, with John Allison, interviewing him for my book about why he took TARP money, his whole history with Ayn Rand, which goes back decades. And let me tell you, he took TARP money because he works in a very highly regulated business, and he was forced to take TARP money. He was told that if he didn't take TARP money, that they would change the rules on his bank capital requirements, and they'd make him take TARP money. His was one of the first banks to pay back TARP money.
He could have waited for that, but he chose that over capitalism.
He could have waited. Give me a break. He's a CEO of a public company, the 12th largest bank in the United States, has 30,000 employees. He's going to let the government come in and shut him down. Jerry, just get a life. That's ridiculous. He did the right thing. And it wasn't a selfish thing. It was a pragmatic, sensible thing for the sake of his shareholders and his constituents.
Don, your tone and your anger in this debate shows me how weak the case is.
You're both great men. And you're both great friends of mine. Stay on message here. I want to just get a quick hit on Alan Greenspan because, I mean, he's really one of her most famous, if not her most famous follower, and he was right in the thick of it. Don Luskin, has Greenspan, in your judgment, recanted from her free market, unregulated free market capitalism? Have Randians lost Greenspan?
Well, look, Greenspan's a very interesting case. I suppose you could say that if you were a really deep Ayn Rand fanatic, like if you were someone who goes to Ayn Rand conventions, like people who enjoy Star Trek or go to Star Trek conventions, then you'd probably say that Alan Greenspan betrayed the message decades ago when he became a regulator. So, look, the reality is that Ayn Rand wrote thousands and thousands of pages of books that are crammed with all kinds of fascinating, challenging ideas. Millions of people have read them. They've picked this from them, they've picked that from them, they've benefited from some, they've ignored others. All the people at BB&T, which is headquartered in North Carolina, they're all deeply religious people who aren't enthusiastic about the atheism message of Ayn Rand, but they've nevertheless built one of the world's most successful banks based on her capitalist philosophy. So Greenspan's no different.
Jerry Boyer, can one agree to like Rand on her free market capitalist and at the same time put aside her atheism? I personally have a lot of problem with that part. I don't see how you run a country. I don't see how you run a society. I don't see how you run your life, and I draw on my own life, without some spiritual, moral, and religious rules of the road. I think that's what God teaches us, and I think that's what the New and the Old Testament teaches. That's why I think charity and helping others is so important, and that's the problem I've always had with Ayn Rand. The late William F. Buckley editorialized very strongly against her for that reason. On the other hand, Jerry, I hope that I am open enough to realize that her ideas of free market capitalism, we need a bigger dose of that right now in American history.